From small steps to big ideas, language is at the heart of who we are. We talk it through, we hear you out, we write the words, we read out loud. It's finding the way, exploring new places, discovering new people and making the difference. It's stories to hear, tales to tell, opening doors and opening minds. Don't just write, communicate. Don't just talk, discuss, debate. Announce yourself, make a noise, speak your mind, and prove your skills to the world. So spread your wings, expand your horizons. It's a big world out there, and this is your journey. With us, you'll be inspired, you'll be supported, you'll be your best. This is more than learning English. These are your hopes and dreams. We are Cambridge Assessment English, and we're here for every learner, every step of the way.
That's exactly our promise. Every learner, every step of the way. Today's topic is going to be business etiquette. So etiquette, we've heard a lot about etiquette. We talk a lot about etiquette. So today we're going to talk about business etiquette. But before that, I'm going to play a video on what is the CFR.
As a language learner or teacher, you may have heard of Common European Framework of Reference, or CEFR. But what is it, and why does it matter for English language learners? It's actually pretty simple. Different learners have different levels of language ability, but opinions about your English level can be subjective. Your friends may think your English is good, but an employer might think it is not good enough, and you may be better at some skills than others. For example, you may be able to read better than you can speak. We need a clear, objective way to describe language skills that everyone can agree on. This is what the CEFR provides. The CEFR breaks down language learning into 6 levels, which it calls A1 to C2. The starting point, A1, describes a very basic language level. As a learner, you can move up the levels until you reach proficiency, C2 level. This is a really advanced level. By describing what you can do in reading, writing, speaking and listening, the CEFR will tell you where you are on the journey from beginner, A1, through to proficiency, C2. There are many Cambridge English exams available for different ages and stages of learning, all matched to CEFR levels, from young learners through to university and the workplace, or simply for travel. The CEFR was developed by the Council of Europe with extensive support from University of Cambridge ESOL examinations. People from all over the world use the CEFR to explain what level of English they are at and what level of English they need. It is used by learners, teachers, universities, governments and employers. The CEFR has been very influential, and not only in Europe. It's been published in more than 35 languages, and descriptions of individual languages have also been developed. Cambridge is a partner in the English Profile programme, which provides very useful descriptions of English grammar and vocabulary at each level of the CEFR. Understanding your language level will help you to achieve your goal, whether it's going on holiday abroad, studying at school or university, or getting a job. And that's why the CEFR levels are useful for everyone.
And I'm going to play a linguiskill recognition that has been received from Air France. So please listen to the training manager at Air France talking about it.
I work with Air France, and I'm responsible for training in areas as varied as office automation, increasing efficiency at work, among others, and languages are also part of my scope. And to carry out these projects, I lead a team of 20 people spread over 3 training centers in Paris. For an international airline, English is very, very important, as you can imagine. We use English tests for our recruitment in the first place, and when the job applicant does not already have a recognized certificate. And we also use them throughout their career for internal promotion and expatriation. And we demand different levels of English from our staff depending on what job they have in the company. So, for example, to be a supervisor or a manager, you must prove that you are at least a B1. And for a flight attendant, for example, we would need to go from B1 to C1 to become a chief purser. First of all, because of Cambridge University, which has an excellent reputation, and there is absolutely no discussion about this. And LinguaSkill brings us the benefits and even more. First of all, I talked about the reliability of Cambridge University. And secondly, the test is fast, which is what we need right now. We particularly appreciate that the test takes place online, which is very, very important for us, any time of the day, at any place. We have been using online tests for about 10 years, like I said before, and we couldn't possibly go back. A test today has to be online. And in addition, our employees cannot cheat because the reading and listening test is adaptive, meaning the questions vary according to the level of the test taker. And our experience shows that Cambridge tests are very robust and reliable. We have had no complaints whatsoever. Transitioning to LinguaSkill opened up new possibilities for us. We have a very wide variety of personnel at Air France, so it seemed to us that switching to a general test would be better for us. So we chose the LinguaSkill General Test, assessing the mastery of General English, because it was more suitable for us, for the whole staff, I mean. So that's what we chose, and that's what we're using now, with a lot of satisfaction again. And regarding the skills that are assessed, thanks to the artificial intelligence the test uses, it is now very simple for us to evaluate not only reading and listening, but also speaking and writing without the intervention of an examiner. And we will not hesitate to evaluate these skills on a case-by-case basis if the need arises.
Cambridge and Scope, a project under the Gujarat government, has been bringing to you a webinar series, and today it is on business etiquette. So this is the final wrap-up series, ma'am. Thank you for being on there with us every day, almost all through the webinar. Thank you very, very much. So final thoughts, ma'am, before we start out with Ian today.
Yeah, definitely. Hello, everyone. Good morning, my dear students. Thank you for joining us. I personally felt very grateful as since last 2 years, I was very keen to arrange or rather provide such platform from where my students can get such knowledge they require to establish themselves in real world. For that, we, Government of Gujarat, is constantly trying to reach to you through various arrangements online. Scope has successfully completed one program on BICEC also. It was about a 50 hours program on English empowerment training program for college students, and through which we reached the remotest village of Gujarat. And I personally love to arrange this series because some of the students need some knowledge for the basic rules of English grammar and how to apply, what are the usage of it. We have covered almost each topic of grammar, and that too we have given 2 hours to each topic to clarify the topic. And each topic I think was very much useful as we received a feedback from many students across Gujarat. In this webinar also, we have received so many feedbacks, and I'm really grateful to you that from that feedback, we come to know that you student need some kind of push to which enhance your vocabulary, enhance your grammar skills. And for that, since lockdown, Scope is doing such programs, and we are arranging quiz. We have almost completed 4 quiz, and 5th quiz is about to be launched soon on our FB page. So like the Scope Facebook page, that is www.facebook.com/GujScope. So since lockdown, we have published we every day give such words which is useful for students for their everyday communication, and we have elaborated the grammar points, how to use it, and for that according to that point, we have given the exercises on our FB page and quizzes. So till date, we have certified almost 1,700 students who have secured 60% and above. And I'm really grateful to the government of Gujarat and Cambridge that supported us in such programs. And I would like to thank you, our Principal Secretary, Srimati Anju Sharma Madam, our Commissioner of Higher Education, Shri M. Nagarajan Sir, to their continuous support and guidance. And I would also like to thank Manish Puri and Joshua, and Ian, of course, for their continuous efforts. So let's begin our today's session, that is business etiquettes. Business etiquette is a set of manner that is required in professional environment, right? In today's time, if you don't have certain courtesy or etiquettes, what other person feels will the impression of yours will be negative to the other person. So when you are working in an office, and if you have some colleague peeps into your cubicle, it would feel like awkward to you. So these are some etiquettes you have to follow that while you are working in a professional level. So certain etiquettes are there, should be followed while doing email, calling someone, attending meeting, cubicle etiquettes, dress etiquettes, office etiquettes, etc. So today Ian will describe us such and more etiquettes with us. After learning this module, you will be knowing which type of etiquettes you should follow while working in the corporate sector, and what are the latest trends that you have to follow while doing your job.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to today's webinar about etiquette in the workplace. My name is Ian Corley, and I'm a Global Product Manager at Cambridge Assessment English, looking after our BET qualifications. Just before we start, I'd just like to give you a few pieces of information. The first thing is to mention that, as you may know, we've been running a series of these webinars. We did 2 of them last week, and we've got 3 more this week. For people who are able to attend all the webinars, you will receive a certificate from us saying that you've attended the program. Other thing to mention today is that I'd be very grateful if during the presentation you could write any questions you have in the chat box, and then at the end of the presentation we should have 5 or 10 minutes where I will be very happy to answer any questions that you may have. So without any further ado, let's begin today's session. So, as I mentioned, today we're going to be looking at etiquette in the workplace. I'm going to start with going through some definitions of what business etiquette is, differences between business and social etiquette. Then we'll spend a little bit of time thinking about first impressions and how the way that we dress, the way that we introduce ourselves, and even the way that we shake hands with colleagues can affect the first impressions that we give. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about how we interact with colleagues, looking at both verbal, written and non-verbal communication. And then I'll talk a little bit about different types of difficult colleagues that we might find in the workplace and how we can work with them. And then finally, I'm going to give you a little summary about the BEC exams that we deliver in India. But before we start, I'd like you to think about what is the most annoying habit that somebody in your family has. And to give you some ideas from my own experience. So things that I find really annoying are when people don't listen. Maybe they're just on their mobile phone and you're trying to talk to them and they're just sort of tapping away on the screen and you feel like you're not being listened to. I find that really annoying. Or it could be that when you're trying to describe something or you're trying to make your point, somebody keeps butting in and you're never able to finish your sentences. I also found that really annoying. And the third thing that always annoys me is when people are speaking very loudly on their phones. This could be at home or it could be at work, especially when you're trying to concentrate. It's very difficult to do so when people are speaking loudly. So those are just 3 examples that I've given you of behavior that I find annoying. And that brings us nicely onto the question, what is etiquette? What does it mean? Well, etiquette and manners play an important role in our everyday life. It's really the way that we interact with other people, and they can also affect the relationships that we have with people. If you come across as being rude or annoying, for example, that's going to affect the relationship you have. Whereas if you are someone who is very polite and respectful, you may well get that politeness and respect back from the people that you are dealing with. And generally, we like to work with people who are considerate and kind. And in fact, we like people who are considerate and kind in their daily life. And this really is the basis of what etiquette is. So you can see here that etiquette is defined as the set of rules or customs that control accepted behavior in society. And I think it's important for me to say at this point that, yes, of course, rules and customs change as we go around the world. The rules and customs that you have in India might be slightly different from the ones that you might see in the Far East, for example, or even in Europe. But that doesn't matter, because there are some rules and about respect and politeness that are universal. And it doesn't matter from which culture you come from and from which part of the world. There are some things which will always be treated as being respectful, and other things that you will do which will always be seen as rude. So it's important to bear in mind that there are certain cultural eccentricities that we have to consider in the different parts of the world where we live and work, but there are also universal rules, and these are the ones that I'm going to be focusing on in today's presentation. So let's move on. Now, you can see here on the screen that I've got some titles of some books here, which are all about etiquette. And I think the question that I'd like you to consider as I'm talking is why proper etiquette is so important. It's quite interesting. You can see the title on the left-hand side of the screen here. It says, "You will never get a second chance to make a first impression." And I think that's really important, because first impressions, and this is something we're going to talk about in detail a little bit later, are very important. People will judge you by the way that you act on that first time that you meet them. And so it's really important that you make a good first impression, because if somebody has a positive feeling about you the first time you meet them, then they will pass that message on, and you'll find that if you deal with them again, it's going to be much easier and you have that respect for each other. But the opposite is equally true. If you make a bad impression the first time you meet somebody, then the effect is even worse. You know, generally we tell more people bad news than we do tell people good news. And so it's really important that you make those good impressions. Here are some other phrases that you that are really interesting. Good manners never go out of style. And that's very true. And so, you know, I'm going to be talking a little bit today how the rules of etiquette have changed over the years, but it's still absolutely true that it doesn't matter. Good style and good manners never go out of style. And this last one is really interesting. It said, good manners open the closed doors. Bad manners close the open doors. This is a really interesting one. So you can imagine just by the way that you interact with people, the impression that you give to people, you can change people's mind. You can create a positive environment. And that's the idea of opening these closed doors. However, the same is true if people are warm and welcoming to you and you are disrespectful or rude, then certainly you'll find that those doors will shut. And once they're shut, it's very, very difficult to get them to open again. And just one more thing that I'd like to say. This is a nice slide. And basically, if we look, it says someone is always watching. You never know who's watching you and your etiquette. And what's important here is that you never know in an office environment who's watching you and who's remembering the way that you act. So it might be that you're talking to one set of colleagues at work, but there might be somebody else. There might be another director or another senior member of the team who's watching you and has an idea of how you're acting, how your manner is. So it's really important to always be respectful and on the best behavior at all times during your working life. So, proper etiquette helps us to exhibit professionalism and impart a polished image. So basically what this means is that your colleagues will find you or have an impression that you are more professional if you're able to give that confident, respectful and polite image. And that's going to help you in your working life. A proper etiquette distinguishes you from others in a competitive market. Yeah, absolutely. So if you're at work, if you're polite, if you're thoughtful, if you're professional, then these are traits that your colleagues at work are going to remember. And it could be the case that further down the line, you'd like to apply for another job, you'd like to get a promotion, or you'd like to move into another department. And if people working in that department don't have a good impression of you, you're going to find it very difficult to get that job. And also, the final point here is that proper etiquette enables us to be confident in a variety of settings. So it goes back to this idea of having this professional image, this air of confidence. And if you have that, if you feel confident, then you're going to be able to work in a variety of different situations. You're going to feel more confident when you're making presentations, when you're talking to your senior managers at work, etc. So bear these in mind. So what I'd like you to think about now is the difference between social etiquette and business etiquette. And just so that we're clear on what the difference is between these two, when we're talking about social etiquette, we're talking about engaging with our friends and with our family. And this will generally be done outside of the work environment. And then when we're talking about business etiquette, we're thinking about the way that we work when we're at work on a day-to-day basis. So let's go and have a look now at some of the differences and between the two. So let's have a look at social etiquette first. So it says here that social etiquette is more likely to refer to informal situations, as we mentioned. Now this is interesting. It says that chivalry may be expected. So when I refer to chivalry, I refer to the polite and respectful way that we should have to each other. So for example, in a social situation, it might be perfectly acceptable for you to hold the door open for another colleague or friend, or if you're a man, to hold the door open for a woman. That's acceptable in a social environment, but we have to be more careful in a business environment, because remember that men and women are equal at work. Men and women are equal anyway, but at work it's important to bear this in mind. So things like being chivalrous and opening the door, etc., might be seen in the wrong way. And so you have to be very sensitive to the fact that social etiquette and business etiquette might not be exactly the same. You know, I'm not saying that you shouldn't hold the door open for a female colleague. I'm saying that you should hold the door open for all colleagues when you're at work. And then the third thing on social etiquette, which is quite interesting, age, social status, and relationship could influence the behavior. So what we mean here is that the way that you talk to friends who are the same age as you, or perhaps your brothers and sisters, may well be different from the way that you speak to your parents or your grandparents. So age does have play a factor here. Also, the relationship you have, I mentioned, the way that you talk to your brothers and sisters may well be different from the way that you speak to your grandparents. So it's important to bear these things in mind. This is less the case in the business environment, because you might find that there are people who are younger than you, who have a more senior position. That doesn't mean that you can speak to them as if you're their friend. You still need to give them the respect that they deserve for the position that they have. So thinking about business etiquette. So business etiquette dictates that all people are treated equally. So this goes back to the idea I had about chivalry and being careful here. Business etiquette is relatively gender neutral. I said that we have to be respectful to everyone. You know, the idea I gave to you about opening a door, making sure you open the door for everyone. But we need to play this, we need to be sensitive to the way that the office environment, the culture that you have where you work, and to understand and observe what is seen as being acceptable. And business etiquette is comparatively formal. As I mentioned before, the way that we talk to all our colleagues should be the same. We give people equal amount of respect, no matter what their position is within the company, their seniority, etc. So there are some important differences. I think it's very important for you to observe the environment that you work in at work, speak to colleagues and find out what's accepted and not before you make any, try to use any of these techniques yourself. Okay. I mentioned that we're going to be looking at first impressions. And I said that first impressions are really important. And if you remember back to that quote earlier, you never get a second chance at first impressions. You want to leave people with a really good impression of you in their mind so that they will think about you in a positive way. You know, remember what I said before, we all want to work with people who are polite and respectful, and we have to do our best to impart that image that we have to other people. Okay, so I found this slide really interesting, and it's really about thinking about formal and informal dress codes. And also, please, I'd like to let you know here that the pictures that you see, I haven't included anything related to traditional Indian dress. I've kept it just to look at kind of formal office wear. So things have changed a lot over the years in the way that we dress. So, for example, I could remember when I first started work 25 years ago, it was really important for me to wear a business suit and to have a tie on at all times. However, today I work in an environment where we have a dress down dress code, which means that most days when I go to work, I can wear what I like. I can wear, I generally choose to wear a smart pair of jeans and a shirt, as I am doing today, but I have that flexibility. However, in my office environment, we are still expected to dress appropriately when we have visitors coming from outside the organization. So if I know that I'm going to be presenting to a group of visitors who are representing a Ministry of Education from the country where they're visiting from, I would still wear that formal business suit and a tie. But I think this picture just really highlights to us that we can be flexible in the way that we dress these days. We still have to be careful that our dress would not be seen as being disrespectful in any way, but we do have more flexibility. But I'd just like you to think for a second as we look at this picture, just to think in your mind and in your situation where you are, what's acceptable for you in an office environment? What kind of clothes can you wear? And is it acceptable for you to wear those same clothes when you attend a job interview, or would you dress differently? Well, let me give you an answer from my own experience. As I mentioned to you, we have a dress down code at work, so I can wear quite casual clothing. However, if I was going to be going for a job interview, just like the example I gave of making a presentation to important visitors, I would wear a business suit with a shirt and tie. Okay, let's move on. Now, it's really important for us when we make those first impressions, think about how we make those introductions in business. I mentioned that there are some cultural differences which we have to be respectful of, but there are some standard rules here. So first of all, if I'm going to be going into a room of people, and maybe there is myself and 2 or 3 of my other colleagues, the first thing that we would do is make sure that we introduce ourselves to everybody in the room, shake everybody's hand, and give a brief description of the work that we do. It doesn't matter what levels of seniority we have in the room. What's important, going back to the previous slide, is that everybody is treated equally, everybody is introduced. You take the time to listen to the other parties in the room so that you understand their names and their positions as well. And of course, there will be an exchange of business cards as well. And it's really important how you handle this. In my experience, the best way to do this is always to give and receive the business card using 2 hands, as I'm showing you now. And when you receive the business card from the other person, take some time to read their name and read their position, and then acknowledge to them, you can do this with eye contact, acknowledge to them that you've understood and you've taken that card. And then what you can do, which I find is useful as well, if it's the first time that you've been introduced to people in the room, when you do have the opportunity to sit down, you can put the business cards on the table in an order so that you can remember who the 3 people or 4 people are. And then you can also write some notes in your pad just so that you remember who everybody's name is and what their position is. One more thing I should say is if you are in the room and people are going to be coming into the room, please always stand up to introduce yourself and to shake hands. And you'll notice if you are coming into a room and there's already people there, that they will do the same. So it's really important that you stand up to be respectful, you shake hands in an appropriate manner. We'll talk about handshakes a little bit later, and that you also introduce yourself and your colleagues fully. You smile, you acknowledge them, and you give your business cards and receive your business cards using both your hands. Okay, so I've just got a little chart, little activity for you to look at here. We've got some first parts of the sentence on the left-hand side of the screen, and then these are the second parts of the sentence, and they've all been jumbled up. So I want you to just take a little moment just having a look at these, and I'll read them through for you. So we've got sentence number 1 starts with introduce yourself. The second one, introduce people in a group. Number 3, person of lesser status and authority is always introduced. Number 4, introduce other people with their. And number 5, always rise as a mark of. Okay, so let's go through these together. So the first one, introduce yourself, goes with B. Introduce yourself by stating your name, position, and purpose. Okay. Number 2, introduce people in a group before initiating conversation. So this is really important. I've been into business meetings before and had introductions where there's been somebody left out and we don't know who that person is in the room. It's embarrassing for the person, and it's also rude because everybody needs to know the name of everyone. It doesn't matter if they are a junior member of staff. They are given the same level of respect as everybody else in the room. Okay, and you must introduce everybody. All right. So, I think we did number 3, didn't we? Person of lesser status authority is always introduced to the person of higher status or authority. So this just reinforces what I said. It doesn't matter what your position is in the company, everybody gets introduced in that business meeting. Number 4, introduce other people with their, and it's C, their full name and professional title. So you introduce your colleague, you give their full name, and you tell them who they are. And if you need to, you can also give them a brief description of what their job is, if it's not clear. And the 5th one, always rise as a mark of respect to seniors. So that's A. So as I mentioned, if you're in the room and people come in, always stand up to greet them. And if you're coming into the room, you will notice people stand up. It's really important that you always stand up as a mark of respect to each other. Okay, let's move on. So now I've got some statements, some questions. It's a little quiz. We're going to go through these together, and I'm going to give you the answers. So the first one, it says, the first person's name you say is always the most important person or the person of higher authority. Yeah, this is true. We should always say the most important person's name first. In business, rank and status are the primary determinants to who takes precedence over whom. Gender and age are not important. So that's what I said before. It doesn't matter what your gender is, if you're male or female. It doesn't matter how old you are, but it is important, the level of seniority. And if you're coming to a meeting with your boss, it may be that you introduce your boss to the other members of the team. Okay, so the second statement. If you can't remember someone's name, don't attempt an introduction. No, this is absolutely false. Please never do this. You should always make an introduction. Everyone notices when you try to avoid it and will suspect that you can't remember the other person's name anyway. The best thing to do in this situation is to confess that you've had a loss of memory, sincerely and politely ask for forgiveness, and request the person to refresh your memory. And then I would write down their name. It's always better to do this. It's always better to be honest and say, I'm very sorry. I can't remember your name. Would you please remind me? It's much better to do this than to try and make some excuse or ignore them. Okay, let's look at the third one. When receiving a business card, you should always treat it as a gift. Take a moment to study the card and keep it with you carefully. Yeah, we've already talked about this. It's really important that you do this. It's really important that you take and receive the card with both your hands and to treat it as something that's important and to read the information. It's very disrespectful if you don't do that. Okay, we've got another couple of questions here. It says name tags are pinned on the left shoulder. Now, this is an interesting one. That's false, okay? Name tags should always be pinned on the right shoulder or on your right chest pocket. And there's a reason for that. That's because the eyes of the person who's looking at you always follow when you're shaking hands. So you're shaking your hand with your right hand, so their eyes will look here to your right shoulder, and that's where your name tag should be. So that's a really important tip for you. Try and remember that. So you always shake hands with your right hand, put your name tag on your right shoulder, on your right chest. And the last one, it says, in today's relaxed business environment, it is not necessary to ask your client's permission before using their first names. No, this is false. Okay, please don't do this. Now, it's true that in today's business world, we do generally talk to people using their first name, but that's only acceptable if somebody has introduced themselves by their first name. Okay, so if you're introduced to somebody as Mr. or Mrs. or Doctor, please refer to them using that title. If they say to you, okay, my name is, for example, Dr. Phillips, but please call me Susan, that's fine. Then you can refer to her as Susan. But if the lady or the gentleman doesn't do that, please always refer to them using their full name. Okay, great. So there's some interesting tips and hints for you to go through. Now, I mentioned that we're going to be spending a little bit of time talking about handshakes. And handshakes are really, really important. And you'd be surprised how many people get it wrong. What advice I would give to you when you're thinking about handshakes is next time you watch the news, have a look at the politicians on the news and have a look at how they shake hands with each other. I'm not saying that they always do it in the correct way, but certainly you will see some examples of very confident handshakes. The idea with a handshake is it's a greeting. You want to tell the other person that you are a polite, friendly, professional and respectful person when you shake their hand. That's the idea behind it. It's a way of breaking the ice and of beginning the communication with that other person. But it's a really, really important first impression that you will give. So let's have a look, first of all, at some pretty bad examples of handshakes. And I've tried to give each one of these handshakes a name. You may or may not have come across all of these, but let me explain to you in a little bit more detail. So the first one that we've got here is called the pull-in. So if you've ever been in a situation where somebody has outstretched their arm, grabbed yours and pulled you in and shaken it ferociously, this is an example of a pull-in. It's not a great handshake to use, and it often gives the impression that you are trying to dominate the discussion by grabbing them and pulling them in and shaking their hand. It's a dominating handshake. It's not really a very good one to use. This one here, this is interesting. It's called the topper. You might have seen this one used quite a lot in if you like to watch American movies. And the idea here is that you come in on the top, so you don't shake hands like this. You come in with a hand on the top, and the other person's hand is below, and you pull it like this. The topper is often used to show power and status. It's not necessarily a negative handshake, but it is quite a powerful one. And you often see this one used. I've seen politicians use this one a lot. This next one down here, called the finger squeeze. So you can see, if you can see on the picture here, the two hands have not been grasped fully. The person has just squeezed the end of their fingers and they've squeezed them quite tightly. It might be quite a painful one. This one is a very negative handshake. It gives a very negative impression. It means that perhaps the person is not interested in talking to you, or they don't value or respect you. Okay, so if anyone squeezes your fingers, it's a negative handshake. Please don't use this one. This one at the bottom, now I've seen this one an awful lot. We call it the bone crusher. And I'm sure you will have experienced somebody squeezing your hand very tightly when they shake your hand. Now, often we think that you should give a firm and a strong handshake. And that is true to a point, but you don't want to hurt the other person, and you don't want to squeeze their hand so tight. So it's not a good idea to give somebody the hardest and the strongest handshake that you can. Okay, we need to be positive and confident and give a good strong handshake, but not something that's going to really hurt them. And again, that could be seen as someone who's being very dominating. This one over here is an interesting one. We call it the two-handed handshake, and you would have seen this one a lot. So you put your hand out first, and as you shake the other person's hand, you bring the other hand in as well. You will see politicians doing this a lot. It's a handshake. It's a positive handshake. It shows warmth. It shows sincerity. It shows familiarity. You wouldn't want to use this handshake all the time, and you wouldn't want to use it as a matter of course. But for example, if you've spent the day with some business colleagues and you've done a number of activities, maybe you've had lunch, it's been a nice day, and you want to show them that you feel warmth to them, you feel respect, etc. You might want to use this handshake. Or you might want to use it at the end of a business deal. You've been negotiating for a business deal and you want to show that you're sincere and genuine. You might want to use this one. But do use it sparingly, okay? You shouldn't use this kind of double-handed handshake every time you shake somebody's hand. Okay, we've got a few more here. So we've got the palm pinch. You can see this is like the previous one with the finger squeeze, but actually it's even lighter. You probably only touch a couple of fingers. It's a weak handshake, and it shows that the other person is uncomfortable. We really shouldn't use a handshake like this. And the one that you can see on the right hand side here, the limp fish, is also something similar. It shows that you're disinterested. It's negative, so you shouldn't use that. A proper handshake, as you can see here, is both hands are joined together. You apply a little bit of pressure, but not much at all. Certainly nothing that the other person would find uncomfortable. They will reciprocate. The handshake should probably be 2 or 3 shakes long, and that's enough. Okay, it doesn't need to be any more than that. You will see from the other person as well their reaction to the way that you shake their hand. It's better to be brief and strong than it is to shake their hands feverishly for a long, long time. I'm often asked a question about kissing as well, because there are some, obviously in different parts of the world, there are different rules about this. For example, just to give you an example, if I go to Turkey on business, for example, it is perfectly acceptable for myself to receive a kiss on both cheeks from male colleagues in the office. This is just part of the culture. There are other parts of the world where it would not be deemed respectful to kiss a male or a female colleague. And again, what I do is I always play it by ear. I always go for the handshake. I never offer to kiss somebody's cheek unless I know that that is something, unless they ask me to do that, or otherwise I wouldn't do that at all. I would just have the handshake. But do bear in mind that there are different cultural norms around the world, and we need to observe and be respectful for those as well. Okay, let's move on. So we talked a little bit about what business etiquette is, the things that we should consider as important. We've looked at first impressions and handshakes, and now let's talk together a little bit more about how we interact with our colleagues. And the question is, what is communication? There are actually lots and lots of different ways that we can communicate with each other. Well, communication, of course, is the ability to express our thoughts and ideas, but it's also important that as part of communication, we listen to and interact with others in a positive way. Communication isn't just one thing. It goes back to that idea at the beginning when I said what really annoys me is when people don't listen or they butt in when you're trying to speak. Communication is a two-way thing, okay? Communication can be verbal, as I'm speaking to you today. It can be written in the form of an email, a letter, a warning, etc. But there are also lots of non-formal ways that we communicate. We can communicate just using our eyes and our body language, and it's really important that we think about that, and we think about the ways of non-verbal communication as well as verbal communication can affect the impression that we give and how it can be seen in terms of business etiquette. So I've got this slide. We've got some different forms of non-verbal communication that we can look at together. So, for example, if you're talking with a colleague, if you're in a business meeting, maybe you're sitting around a desk at work, and you lean forward as you speak or as the other person speaks. This is good because it shows that you are interested in what they're saying. So it's very positive. Obviously, smiling is also really important, and it gives a positive impression, but we have to be a little bit careful with smiling. It's fine to smile to show that we're welcoming. It's fine to smile to show that we understand and we appreciate the other person. But if you were to smile all the way through a conversation with someone, they might be a little bit uneasy, especially if the conversation doesn't necessarily include a topic which is particularly interesting or funny. So use smiling sparingly. Don't do it all the time. That might be off-putting, but do it to show that you're warm and friendly and respectful for the other person. Okay, nodding, which is the movement of the head, is very similar to leaning forward. It shows that you're attentive and alert, that you're listening. Okay, you might even be nodding as you're taking some notes, and it just shows as a sign of respect that you're listening to the other person. Okay. Eye contact is important. It shows that you're focused and it shows that you're interested. Those of you who attended my previous webinar, which is all about presentation skills, I mentioned 2 techniques that you can use. If you feel uncomfortable looking directly in someone's eyes all the time, you can focus on a position between their eyes and just above, and you can move between their eyes and that position. Okay, still maintaining eye contact with them, but it means that you don't have to stare directly in their eyes at all times, which might be uncomfortable. Similar technique that you can do is move your eyes between their eye line and their mouth. So as they're speaking, you focus on their mouth and back to their eyes. Again, this shows that you are being respectful and that you're listening, but also it stops you from looking in their eyes all the time, which you might feel uncomfortable in doing. Some kinds of body language that we should try to avoid. Crossed arms and even crossed legs can be seen as being very defensive. Often we do this as a natural reaction, but please try not to. Sometimes, of course, in the office environment, you might feel more comfortable crossing your legs when you're talking, and that's fine. But make sure that you don't use crossed arms or crossed legs to show that you're annoyed or that you're in a defensive position. Fidgeting with your hands or tapping your feet or anything else that you might do when you fidget, you know, tapping your pen on a piece of paper is not a good thing to do. It could show that you're nervous, or it could show that you're bored. It certainly isn't very respectful to the other people in the meeting room. Try not to do that. What you could do as well is that you could talk to your colleagues and ask them, is there anything that I do when I'm nervous or bored? Have you noticed that I do anything? You know, do I fidget? Do I fidget with my hands, my fingers? Other people might have a better idea of what you do than you do yourself. So please bear that in mind. Lack of eye contact can be seen as untrustworthy if you're always looking away or down. Okay, so bear that in mind. I know there are some cultural differences, but do try and, you know, at the very least, make some sort of contact for a short period of time. Also, leaning back, stretching your arms, it shows that you're bored, it shows that you're uncomfortable and doesn't leave a very good impression. So, let's have a look here. Verbal communication. Let's have a look at the quote at the top. It says, if it transpires that there is a surfeit of applications for this post, we may have cause to invite assistance from another department. Okay, this is an example of using very long or uncommon words where it's not necessary. Always try and keep your messages simple. So a better example would be to say, if too many people apply, we may need help. Short and simple is always the best way. If somebody says something that you don't understand or you perhaps didn't hear very well, there are some important phrases that you can use to ask for clarification. You could say, excuse me, I don't understand. Could you repeat that, please, using different words? Okay, it's perfectly acceptable to say that. If somebody's talking to you in English and you don't understand what they've said, it's perfectly okay to say that. It's much better to say that than to say nothing and to misunderstand. You could say, could you put that more simply, please? Or can I just clarify that, please? Do you mean that you want me to? Okay. These are very polite. It's perfectly acceptable to ask for clarification, and please do so. It's much better to do that than just to stay quiet. Okay, just some other important things to summarize that you should think about in the workplace. Okay, the first thing, don't get into fights or arguments. I know that often in the workplace, we might have to deal with difficult subjects. We might be under pressure. We might not agree with decisions that colleagues have made. But it doesn't help anybody for that to turn into a fight or an argument. Okay, it's only going to make the situation worse. It's going to leave a bad impression of you. We should always try to be as diplomatic as possible. We should try to understand the other person's point of view. And there are different ways of dealing with differences of opinion than having a fight or an argument. Okay, it's always better to try to communicate fully with your colleagues, talk to your line manager, and prevent things from escalating to this stage. Also, these days we work in an open plan office environment, many of us, those of us not working at home currently. And so it's important that we're respectful to our colleagues around us. If you're going to be delivering a webinar, then try and take your laptop into another room so that you that they don't overhear you. If you want to have a meeting, don't do it at your colleague's desk. Go away to a quiet area. Be respectful of those around you. Okay, don't gossip at work. There are lots of things that go on at work. We'll hear things and stories about other colleagues, but be respectful, be respectful of other people's privacy. Okay, if you become a gossip at work, people will find out about that and they will always treat you as that. Okay, we don't want people to think that we are someone who can't be trusted with information and that gossips about our colleagues. Be respectful, don't engage in gossip. Okay. Respect the opinions of others. As I mentioned on a previous slide, we don't want to have any arguments at work. Everybody's opinion is valid. Just because it's different from yours doesn't mean that it's wrong. We can all learn from each other. We should respect each other and try to learn from things that people say. Okay. Also, be cordial. Basically, that means to be polite. Be cordial and polite to everybody in a work environment. Even if you find the relationship difficult, it's always better to be polite with our peers in an office environment. It's going to help the relationship and it's going to help you in your career. And then finally, we should also respect people's privacy. Okay, we all have different levels of privacy. Some people might be quite open with their opinions. They might be quite open talking about their private life. Other people will be the exact opposite of that. We need to be sensitive to the needs of others and to always respect their wishes if we want to have a good relationship at work. Okay, so we've just got a little checklist here. Let's just go through it. We've mentioned these points. Be softly spoken and cordial and polite. Don't get into fights and arguments. Be punctual. Don't be late, okay? Don't gossip or backbite behind your colleagues. Be productive at work. Don't spend lots of time chatting or distracting other people. Take the initiative wherever possible and consult with colleagues before making decisions. It's important that you do that. You might think that your idea is the best one and you want to take that decision, but talk to colleagues, be open about it, okay? There might be another way, a better way that you haven't considered. Get involved with working groups and working with others, okay? Be open to other people's opinions and suggestions. Be honest about your mistakes. This is a really important one, okay? It's always much better to be honest. If you've made a mistake, tell your line manager and tell them how you're going to rectify the mistake. And most importantly, make sure that you learn from that mistake so it doesn't happen again. We all make mistakes. That isn't the problem. Not learning from a mistake or being dishonest about it is a problem. Your line manager will respect you more for being honest about a problem than trying to hide it and then finding about it later. And then also, final point, make sure that your written communication, your emails, presentations, etc., are always clear and well explained. Okay, I've just got a few minutes left, so I just wanted to give you a little bit of advice about dealing with difficult colleagues. Okay, we're going to find people in our private and our working life that we find hard to get along with. We all try to get along with as many people as possible, and I would urge you to try and find a way to get on with everybody as well as you can. But there will be certain situations and certain types of people that you might find difficult. I just wanted to make you aware of what these traits are. So the first one, the know-it-alls, we've called them here. These are people that will always have the right answer or always feel that they have the right answer. They might come across as being a little bit arrogant. They don't listen, and they might make you feel insecure. It's important to know that nobody knows everything, okay? And we can all learn from each other. But also, it's also a good idea if somebody is a know-it-all, find out what it is that they know. You know, how did they get that knowledge? Try to use it to your advantage, and if they really do have those knowledge and skills, learn from them. You'll also find people that are very passive. It might be difficult to get an opinion from them. Perhaps they don't stand up for themselves, or they certainly won't stand up for you. They're very quiet. They don't want to make presentations. Okay, this is also negative as well. It's important that you have an opinion at work. It's important that you know your work. It's important that you feel confident about what it is that you do, and that other people around you know that you're confident as well. So don't be passive in the workplace. And if there are people that are passive, it's important that you get them out of their shell and get them to work with you. You might find that you're working with a dictator, somebody who likes to order everybody around, but doesn't necessarily do a great deal of work themselves. They might rule by fear. They might shout a lot. Okay. Be careful of these people. Make sure that you always know exactly what it is that you have to do, that you understand what your job description is. Don't do their work for them. Make sure that you always have your work done on time so that you can prevent any difficulties. There are some people who we call yes people. They always say yes to everything you say or do, but they don't necessarily deliver on that. They don't get the work done, and their opinion might not be valuable because they always say yes. Okay, don't be this kind of person. You need to stand up for yourself, okay? Don't say yes when you think the answer is really no, and don't always take on work when it might not be your responsibility to do so, because if you get asked for your performance and you haven't completed that task, that's also very negative. And the same goes, of course, for no people. These are people who will always say no. They're always negative. Okay, you have to be wary of people like this. Don't buy into their negativity. Don't become like them, because then you will also be seen as being very negative as well. And then, of course, there are people who are always moaning, always finding something bad about what we do. These are called the gripers. And again, you don't want to end up being like this person. You want to be seen as positive in the workplace. Okay. So just to summarize, okay, etiquette varies across countries and industries. We've talked about this. However, there are some golden rules which you can use all over the world. And also, I told you that you must be observant and respectful of the rules in your particular company or your particular country. You need to be receptive to others, okay? If somebody offers you a warm handshake, give them a warm handshake back, okay? Just be as respectful to them as they are to you. Think of the other person and think about how the way that you would like to be treated, and treat them in that way. Keep your language simple. Don't confuse people. Use a good tone of voice and intonation. Come across as being, confident and professional, but also kind and considerate. Have that confident attitude, and don't be afraid to ask questions and get clarification. So, I'd like you to take a look at yourself now. What type of person are you? Well, do you think that you are a good communicator? Do you think that other people understand exactly what it is that you're trying to say to them? And do you think you would benefit socially and professionally if you improved your language and communication skills? Well, if the answer to any of those questions are yes, then you might want to consider taking one of the BEC qualifications, the Business English Certificates, which are available all over in India, and they're recognized by literally thousands of employers as proof of your great English communication skills. BEC is supported. We have lots of fantastic resources that can help you as learners to prepare for it. And you can see here a great app which has been produced in India for BEC students to help them to prepare so that you can learn about not only the exam, but also your business communication skills as well, and how to be more confident in using English at work. Okay, so the BEC qualifications are recognized all over the world, and there are 3 levels.
We thought we will take you through LinguaSkill. That's what Scope is working with Cambridge on. LinguaSkill, what is LinguaSkill? I will talk to you shortly. The chat is also being enabled right now, so you can raise your questions there. Right, here we go. So LinguaSkill is a modular test. Like BEC, he was telling you, we test all 4 skills: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. But LinguaSkill, you can test 1 skill at a given time. You don't have to do all 4 skills. You can take 1 skill at a given time, and you can understand your English level. So if you're learning English, if you're a native language speaker, you don't know English, and you've done to college and you want to learn language, the first way to learn language is to first improve your receptive skills, we say. Receptive skills. I mean, take, for example, how a child learns his language. The child learns the language by listening to the parents talking. So the child learns it by listening. So you listen to English, you read English, and that's the first step where you learn English that way. Then the second step is, so you do a learning test or listening test and a reading test in the first semester. Many universities do that way. Then they do a speaking or writing in the second semester or later on in the year. So that is one thing. So you can do 1 skill at a time. So that's easier and convenient for you. So we have a reading and listening test and a speaking test. So you can do 1 skill at 1 given year or semester and make it comfortable. The feedback link will come in a moment. I'll have the feedback link there. In the meantime, you could add some thoughts there. I will just come back in. I've put up the feedback link there.
Himadri is asking one question, sir. How can we get future notification of such webinar in future if we are interested to attend it? If it is arranged by Scope, you can have the information through our website or our Facebook page. We will declare any program if we are conducting. So just check the Scope website and Facebook page.
As you were saying, ma'am, there's a lot of information on the Scope page. There's a lot of new words they can learn. There's a lot of things that is there. So please keep visiting the Scope page. Also visit the Cambridge English Facebook page. We also put up new words every day. So as I told you, this is a multi-level test. So if you are a novice in the language or a new starter in the language, or if you're an advanced person, this language test, the same test will be done. The test adopts itself to your learning ability. So your score will come as a common European framework. So whether you're A1, B1, or C1 will be defined, and the score will come out in one score sheet. So this is the LinguaSkill. So if you get a very high score on LinguaSkill, it almost shows that you will get almost a 6 or a 7 almost on your IELTS score. So if you want an IELTS score of 7, you should get a good you do a LinguaSkill. a linguist skill will cost you much lesser than an IELTS. An IELTS costs you around 13,500 rupees, ma'am. But linguist skill costs a fraction of that cost. So this is an adaptive testing. The marking is done by Cambridge immediately, and you get a result almost within 4 hours, or I mean almost instantly if it's a listening reading test, and within 2 days if it's a speaking test. So this is how the certificate for linguist skill looks. You will look at the certificate here, and the auto marking means every time you make a mistake, the test will become easier. Every time you make a good answer, your test will become a little more difficult. So it will keep adopting. That's why so many people accept this certificate. There are airlines in Air France. There is EVA Airways in Taiwan. There's Starlux, which is there in Taiwan. Many companies accept this as a, if you're going to university in Australia, Finders accepts it. In Canada, Lawrence College accepts it. So you could just go through this list. It's on our website. Go have a look. There are so many institutions that accept these certifications.
Yeah, Kaushal Desai is asking, eScope has Instagram account? Yes, we have Insta page. That is www.instagram.com/scopegujarat. You can even go to our Instagram page. We have FB page. Yeah. Kuldeep Singh Gohil is asking admission process. You just drop a mail. The email ID will be displayed. You can drop your message. We will convey you the procedure, how you should appear in scope, and how can you take training from us, and examination of Cambridge. Everything you will get the information through mail.
I think there's been a lot of positive remark for you, ma'am. I think people are interested. There are a lot of interest among the student community about taking these exams. And these are the costs that Scope will be charging. Before ma'am starts, I will just tell you, this is the cheapest of linguist skill that is being offered across the country. The Gujarat government has subsidized it significantly to bring it to this price. In Madhya Pradesh, you would have seen a cost almost more than 1,000 rupees, more than this. And in any market, in an open market, the same test will cost you almost double the amount. It's about 4,500 plus in an open market. And in this, you get a learning. In that, you just get the test. So there's 20 hours of learning, ma'am. You want to just talk them through this slide, ma'am?
Yes. Students, we have this fee structure for lingua skill training and examination. Training will be of 20 hours as per the institute desires, because some institute says every day 1 hour we will spend for training. Some institute says we provide 2 hours. So as per your convenience, we will provide training, and it will cost 2,700 per student, including training and exam. Right, and CPT training and exam will cost 1,150 and 16 hours training program. That too also depends on how institute wants to conduct the training program. Daily 1 hour or daily 2 hours as per their desire. And last is the fees is 3,150. For that, you have 3 things together. CPT examination means it will show where you are, what the level you are having right now at present, and then lingua skill training and then examination. It will have training hours, 20 hours training program. These fees structure, as Joshua sir has said, that it is very much less than market price. So do join us. If you have any queries regarding admission or regarding examination, about the fees, about the conduction of examination, please do write to us. Joshua will display the slide of our contact details, and you just drop an email. query.scopeguj@gmail.com. You can put your query. Whatever question will be there, we will answer you definitely. Our phone number is also there. We have a Scope Facebook page, Insta page, and YouTube channel. You can go through these pages for latest updates. Yeah.
You also have the barcode scanner skill. To register for Lingua Skill, just write to Scope. They will share the exam dates. They will share the cost. Based, I remember ma'am telling me, based on your location, they will tell you where your class is, which part of Gujarat you are, because we are running this across Gujarat. So let's say you're from Rajkot, then where do you go to? They will put all together. They'll collate all these people from different districts, Mesna, Gujarat, Rajkot, Halol, Kalol. I'm just giving names of places in Gujarat. I know Vadodara, Surat, Bharuch, wherever you are, they will pick it up, group those places, then write to you saying, okay, there are 25 of you. Why don't you do a class on a Saturday? That's what they're going to do. Then they will tell you all the details. We are talking about a much larger group. We are not talking about 5 students. We are talking about a state. And every day we've been having close to 1,000 people on the webinar. We have the first day we almost had 3,800 people on a webinar here. So it's not easy for us to give you precise data, but we will provide you the data the minute we have it. But right now we are telling you, please write to Scope. Please fill up the form. It will help us serve you better.
Yes.
What is the best way to start communication with colleagues? I normally start by talking about something that we have in common. With colleagues, it's not so challenging, but with clients, it can be challenging because you're meeting a new person. But if you do a little bit of research about whom you're going to meet, you will be able to find a few interests about them. You can check on LinkedIn. You will know what is the latest course they have covered, what they have studied. So you just go start by congratulating them on that. They feel very happy that you started on that. And it's a nice etiquette also. It's something that you can value, when you go there. People will be able to talk about it. They'll be proud of that you are recognizing their achievement. And from there, you can start a conversation easily. Shubham, you're saying something about, it depends on which job you are
appearing for. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I have my 2 fingers cut. But if you have such a job that you have to use your fingers and you have to use maximum of your hands, then you should at least describe in CV.
Or if you have, even let's say you have to use a keyboard and you have managed to manage the art of using a keyboard without that hindering your normal process. Let's say you're programming and you can use the keyboard without those 2 fingers or with those fingers that you've lost. You don't have to mention it because you've mastered the art. You can talk about it as an achievement in your interview skills. So don't worry about it. If you know, let's say it is a technical job, I don't think you should be able to worry about it. Mohit, again, I'll tell you the answer to that is please get in touch with Scope, write to Scope, or fill the feedback form. Scope will get back to you. The Scope team will get back to you with all the details. The certificate will come from Cambridge side. The information about the course will come from Scope side. That's our promise.
Devin is asking why you have sent a link. We have sent you feedback link to fill it up, and we have asked you to which type of question, which type of webinars do you want in future, which type of knowledge you want to acquire from us, so that we can plan accordingly. So I think we have covered all the questions students have asked. Joshua, shall we end the session?
Yes, we can end. Thank you very much. It has been a very informative session for me to be talking to you all for the last few days, 5 days. I think, ma'am, we've had a very good time bringing to you. We hope it's been useful and beneficial for you as a student.
Yes, but please do visit our pages and fill the link. And thank you very much for joining this webinar series. I'm really thankful to Joshua sir, who has been there for every time, and Manish Puri, who has organized such a good webinar. And of course, I'm thankful to our Principal Secretary Anju Sharma Madam and Nagarajan sir, who is Director of Higher Education. And thank you, my Scope team, who is always supporting me in every venture, every event. Thank you very much, my dear students, and we will meet you soon. And please do go to our Facebook page and attend our quiz, and you can have the vocabulary words every day, and keep in touch with scope. And if any queries you are having, please do write to us in the mentioned email ID. You can call us also. Thank you very much. Thank you, Joshua. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. And have a nice, and all of you have a nice day.